us LIR.com, 927LIR.com, and YouTube. I am John Calabucas, the Bouk, with my friend Paul Zoobie. So that was a pretty boring Super Bowl up until like the fourth quarter. A lot of mistakes, a lot of stupidity. We may as well talk about it. There's just so much to talk about.
Well, yes, there's definitely a lot to talk about. It was a very exciting game, second overtime game in history. So that was the good part. But I think the most interesting thing was, John, it was a game won by the special teams. And
Yep.
Kansas City's special teams won the game. And there were, I think, a couple of major turning points regarding the special teams. The obvious one is the muff, which was basically the game. That was turned the whole game around. But I'm going to talk about another play first. At 10-3 in the early third quarter, Andy Reid decides to go for a 57-yard field goal after San Francisco's rookie kicker, who I was afraid of, as I mentioned last week of my concerns about the 49ers, nailed a 55-yarder for a Super Bowl record. So when he went out there to make it 10-6, and they were obviously in area they could easily have gone for it on fourth down. They actually went the conservative route, and in my view, a really very risky situation where if he misses, the 49ers take over on the 47, and they're easily can get another score, even 2 first downs, and they have a field goal attempt. So Harrison Buckner, who obviously he had a tremendous season.
Yes, he did.
Hits a low line drive. And let's face it, when he kicked that, I was like, what was that? And it just was like a howitzer, and it went through, but it could have easily have been blocked. So that, to me, was one of the, it was like a head scratching decision that turned out fine. So every week we always have these controversies, John, right? Going for it, don't go for it. And it's always the right decision, folks, when it works. And in this game, not only did that work, Kyle Shanahan decided to go for it on 4th and 3 instead of tying with a field goal, and miraculously gets it like George Kittle by like a half a yard. So I know I went from special teams to the coaching decisions, but those are my things that really popped to my head, John, on a game that, like you said, was relatively boring.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned about Shanahan. I said to myself, what is this, another Lions coach here? I said, what is he doing? They said he could tie the game, and that was such a risky, gutsy move, but it's only gutsy, like you said, if it works. If it doesn't work, you're calling him every word in your vocabulary.
Right.
I was thinking about what you said about Moody. Every time he was there, he was perfect during the only thing he missed, which was which wasn't really too much his fault, was the extra point, which.
Well, he kicked it low. You can't get blocked on an extra point. I mean, those guys got a little penetration, but Moody missed that. And that was, you could argue, the difference in the game, because it would have forced Kansas City to go for the touchdown. They were able to get the field goal. I mean, ultimately, so from a prognostication perspective, this is like a perfect game for Bouk and Zoobie, because Bouk is happy he picked the Chiefs. Zoobie doesn't feel too bad, because he knows that his choice was not a bad choice. It took a muff punt off a guy's leg, and to really make the difference in the game. So kind of everybody looks okay with this, because either way you fell on like what you thought. Really, it could have gone either way, right? Ultimately.
Yeah, easily. And to tell you the truth, Mahomes did not really play well until really that last quarter, to be honest. I mean, it's like he woke up out of a slumber.
Well, he was under pressure. He was under a lot of pressure.
Yes, he was.
They hit him a lot. He got hit more than he typically gets hit. The officials decided not to call holding penalties, which was a big advantage for the Chiefs. I know early in the game, Trent Williams got a few penalties and
Yes, he
got
did.
knocked over one time, so that was kind of a surprise. But I thought one of the funnier lines I saw was that somebody had mentioned, "Oh, Kansas City held Joey Bosa to 0 sacks," and then when you go in the comments, everyone's like, "Yeah, they held him to 0 sacks." So there was one particular play. It was a huge third down. I think it was in the third quarter where Kansas City converted on a third down. And Bosa literally is trying to sack Mahomes with his one humongous arm. This guy is huge. The
Yeah,
reason he's only, folks, is he's trying to sack him with his one arm because his other arm is being basically pinned and he's basically being tackled. And I'm like, they didn't call that. So this is how the NFL works, right? So I know people don't like to, not having the officials involved. And if you're a 49er fan, you can't whine, right? You can't whine about it because you can argue till the cows come home, oh, they should have called that holding penalty, but it doesn't matter because all these big games from last year's James Bradbury's holding penalty that was called to this particular play, not that it was a game changer, but it was a big third down conversion and there was that tight of a game. Who knows what would have happened? And they don't call it. And that's
yeah.
that's the NFL in a nutshell, right?
Well, and the fact is that if you look at the number of chances the Chiefs had in the red zone and they ended up not getting a touchdown, I mean, again, if they would have converted those into touchdowns, this would not have been a close game. I mean, you just think about the amount of times they were in the red zone and they end up walking away with a field goal or two and one touchdown. They had a lot of chances, and of course, with the fumbles on both sides, you
Yes,
know, the
crucial.
crucial fumbles on. Uh,
Yeah,
I I was surprised how shaken um, Pacheco was. He was shaky in that game.
yeah, he had a
He
tough game, which
yeah
led to the outburst by your buddy, your friend, who we definitely don't want to mention his
yeah
personal friend because that was embarrassing for CBS. I
yes
had
it was.
mentioned, I remember when the Jet game happened, and I complimented the directors for not making a big deal about it and showing that individual a few times. This was really bad, John. This was embarrassing. And Roger Goodell up there, what pregame talking to this person. I mean, and I don't, obviously I don't buy into the rigging stuff. It's absurd. But from the NFL, who's already, by the way, folks, announced that Amazon is
Yeah.
getting a playoff game. I don't know if that's in addition to Peacock.
No, it's one. It's only one per year.
Is it one per year for now? So
Yeah,
that's what
in
they're
other
doing.
words, yeah, it's alternating. It's alternating because I that was the first when I saw that I'm like, we just spoke about this. And I was looking to see if Peacock got the other game. No, they say it's alternating one per network. Let's put it that
Right.
way.
Okay. Good news because most people do have an Amazon account and it's a lot easier. Now, that still is going to cause problems for people who may not have a smart TV and don't have another a Roku type of device, right, to get streaming. So even though it is Amazon and people, I don't even know if people realize who order stuff from Amazon that obviously covers the network as well. So you get that on top of the all those pieces of junk that they sell, but they do. It is convenient, I will say. So typically most people have it. So it won't be as big a deal next year. But yeah,
Hey,
so good
hey,
riddance
listen,
to
I had no idea that we had Amazon Prime because my wife had that Amazon thing that you pay, what is it, $100 a year or something to
yeah,
get.
what it's more than that now, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
whatever.
I had no idea that because you had that, you have Amazon Prime. So 1 year has gone by since she's had this, and I didn't even know I could watch Amazon Prime on this thing. It's like, wow.
So you missed all those Thursday night football games. So
Yeah,
as
it
we
was.
mentioned already, John, streaming sounds great. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever, but they're losing out on customers because people just don't have that in their normal life. And if you don't, you forget and you don't watch the game, and you realize, oh, big deal, I didn't watch the game on Thursday night. So what
Oh,
and oh, yeah, go.
by the way, 123 million people watched the Super Bowl. It's the most watched program on TV, even the moon launch, the 1969 moon launch. They said it actually beat that amount of viewers. I said, that's pretty impressive. 123 million people watched that game.
Right, it doesn't even account for people who watch in groups. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
the NFL is doing well. I mean, there was I guess, an added attraction to see, and that's why they fed it and like I said, kind of embarrassed themselves. But uh, so let's get back to the game. Couple other major things. Crazy thing. I mean, to me, how crazy was Greenlaw getting hurt running onto the field. He tore his Achilles. That was
Unbelievable.
a huge loss for them. That was big. Um, Unbelievable, right?
And now in Las Vegas, I'm assuming that that's turf. That's not grass.
You know something? I thought it was natural grass. It looked beautiful. I think it's natural grass, but it's
Because
an indoor
because the way
stadium, right?
because the way his foot buckled again, how many times have
I
we
guess it
seen
has
that
to be.
this
I
year?
guess it has to be because it's an indoor stadium, right? So
Yeah, but they are well, they've been experimenting with grass on the indoor stadiums too. So that's why I'm asking that because it looked like it was turf just by the way his foot buckled for no reason. I mean, these are top trained athletes, and for his foot to give out like that that was really weird, really weird. I mean, running onto the field, crazy,
yeah, well,
crazy.
that was terrible. So I don't know that. I guess I should know that fact about the field. I do have George Toma here on my text, so maybe I'll shoot him a quick and ask
George,
George, who's now in retirement. So that's a very inside joke for our longtime Bouk and Zoobie fans. So John, we're on our third episode, and we just passed our 50th episode. We failed to mention last week that because probably had our special guest Alexander on, very special guest. So thanks again for Alex being on the show. That was our 50th, John. This is our third YouTube. We had some little angled issues on my camera last week, so I do apologize. My nostrils are very attractive though, so I did find that out from last week's episode. So I spoke to our great producer, and we have figured it out this week. So we have the proper angle, but we're really having a lot of fun doing on the video. So please, folks, continue to watch us on YouTube and do us a favor: subscribe to the show and like the show, the old thumbs up. And also, John, one thing we haven't mentioned is that there's actually a comment section on
yep,
YouTube.
that's right.
So we would love if our viewers out there are brave enough to throw a few comments out there and have a little interaction to get more people to view our show, because ultimately this is a word of mouth show. So we're doing a local New York tri-state area show with the big events, obviously Super Bowl, this week's theme. So it's word of mouth. So the more people that you can share the show, please do us a favor and do it. And then if you're still on Spotify and that's easier, fantastic. If you still you want to go to the website, the LIR websites, I believe our show's still available. Definitely
Yes,
our
it is.
old shows are there, but we definitely hope that people will join us on YouTube. So anyway, so Kelsey embarrassed himself. I it's kind of a sad commentary. Go up to the coach and just say, Andy, coach, I need to be in on these situations. He has to go up and like do a WWE move on him. It's really just that's kind of a poor job, and they laugh it off. Oh, no big deal. I guess
Yeah.
when you win, it's easy to say that, right? It would have been interesting to see the reaction if they lost.
Well, Andy Reid is a really good guy and played it off, but Kelsey was a punk. Okay, as my text to you, I was really upset with what he did. Listen, it could be in the heat of the battle. That's fine. You could start. It's happened to me, screaming and yelling, but you don't. The guy's 65 years old. Okay, you're gonna knock him over, and then you don't have a coach. I mean, it was just pure stupidity to me. If you have a disagreement, just say, like you said, put me in, coach. I should be in there. Don't scream at the top of your lungs, and then you have to have a teammate rip you apart. He made himself look like a punk, a real punk. I'm sorry.
No, he deserved it. He deserved it. So that
And
was
he got
definitely
and he got hit hard on you know on all the chat rooms and everything. Man, he got destroyed almost instantaneously. My wife was actually reading off all the comments to me right after he did that. I'm like, boy, these people posted really quickly. They didn't even waste time.
yeah. No,
To be honest, I thought that Reed was a lot older than 65. I mean, he's only 5 years older than us. He looks like, right? He looks like he's about 20 years older than us.
well, not yet, John. Not yet. Come on, give us a little break. So I'm still 59. Give me a break.
We're almost 60.
All right. Anything else from the game? I mean,
Well, other than that, you would think in the biggest sporting event during the year that we could avoid something to do with the Jets not
yeah.
being, and of course, the Jets come into the conversation. McCall Hardman scoring the winning touchdown. And what was crazy is Mahomes said that Hardman didn't even know that he won the game. He didn't think that the game was over. How can you? I mean, what is with these guys not understanding the overtime rules, not knowing when the game's ending? It, I,
I
it was
think that he
incredible.
denied that though. I think he denied this. So you're saying when did Mahomes say that in the post game or what? Did you? Was
Yeah,
that interview?
yeah,
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 did I
yeah,
didn't see
yeah.
that.
They spoke to him. He was running up to him, and Hardman didn't know that the game was over.
But who said that? Mahomes said that.
Mahomes said it.
He
Yes.
did when he got interviewed. He did say that. I did not.
Yeah.
I missed that. I'm sorry because I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
today they were talking about that, and I think Hardman
No.
said something like he knew. I don't know. The irony of ironies, right? So the Jets season ended after 4 plays, and or I should say started. I'm sorry, ended. Well, it did end obviously after 4 plays, but the season started that way, and to see the NFL season end with a and it is this really sad, right? He is the second person of all time who played for the Jets and scored a touchdown in the same season in the Super Bowl, along with Matt Snell, when obviously
Oh.
he was a Jet. So this is the second Jet
Wow.
of
Wow.
all time to do that. Yeah, and he also had a big catch early in the
Yes,
game,
yes, he
which
did.
unfortunately, Pacheco fumbled after that. So it was one thing that all the Jet fans were like, "Oh, thank God he fumbled, so I don't have to hear about this." So yeah, of course, the Jets have to make the conversation. I'll actually get to them a little later. But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, you can't complain. It just like you said, it was kind of a defensive game, and we should mention that in Steve Spagnuolo, which we actually did mention prior. This is like, why don't these teams that are looking for head coaches wait for the Super Bowl coordinators? Because why wouldn't you want the coordinator from the Super Bowl champion? Why wouldn't you? It's a very interesting situation with him. He's not getting any younger, but him not getting another chance, it's kind of crazy, right? Because now he has been the D coordinator 4 times in the Super Bowl
And
champion, Super Bowl champion.
what you know what happened in that game, and again, this is just from a fan perspective and watching the games all these years. But you kind of knew when they were going to blitz. I didn't understand what the 49ers were thinking. That several times that he blitzed, it was almost obvious that they were going to do it, and they did nothing about it. The 49ers. It was pretty. I don't know. Maybe people saying, "No, it wasn't so obvious." I thought it was obvious, especially putting pressure on Purdy. By the way, Purdy, you have to give that kid credit. I have to say he played a pretty solid game. I mean, for a 24-year-old under all that pressure, first half he played great. Second half, not the greatest, but overall, I think he did fine.
He played good enough to win. He played good
Yes,
enough
he
to
did.
win the
Yes,
game.
he did. Yes, he did.
No,
Yes,
he's
he did.
been a great story. He's their quarterback going forward. They've got him on this ridiculously cheap deal, which benefits them across the board. They have a good amount of free agents. They're the amount of free agents, and we'll get into free agency. It's like still a month away, so we'll have a little preview of who's available because Snead, which Alex had mentioned last week, looked like a goat early. I was laughing when he picked up that dumb penalty, which was a big
Yeah,
penalty at the time.
really
Came
dumb.
back and made some key plays. He is a free agent. He definitely can get franchised. So we should be, we'll be getting the franchise players announced over the next whatever it is. I guess it's with 2 or 3 weeks because free agency's a month away. That's huge because we're going to find out who's actually going to free agency. That's a big thing for these teams. I mean, there's a lot of quality players, right? I would be all over these KC and San Francisco rosters and Detroit and the Ravens as well. I mean, you got to be looking at their teams and see who's available because typically you can't pay everybody.
That's right.
So that's something that is going to be very interesting for teams like the Jets and the Giants who are hoping that they actually can make some good moves to make their fan base happy soon enough.
Yeah, and
And also, I guess we should mention Juwan Jennings, who was probably going to be the MVP of the game until
yes,
they lost. So he probably would have won it with his reception and his pass, the slowest developing trick play you ever probably saw. Now, that's a disadvantage about watching the game at home as opposed to being at the game. Because when you're at home, you're like, what the heck is this? This is so slow. And the next thing you know, oh, he's touchdown. There's nobody there. So there was one guy there and he kind of got picked off and that was it.
very
So,
risky play.
yeah, no, it was,
I mean, the fact that it was having him throw clear across the field, and there were so many guys that were nearby there that if they would have recognized it, they could have picked that thing off and run untouched. I mean, that was a risky play. I have to say, the 49ers with their plays is just crazy. McCaffrey, again, played a great game. I thought he played a great game other than
the
the
fumble.
fumble.
Yep.
Other than the fumble. But he's a solid player.
And then Debo Samuel got hurt too. So he hurt, and he's been hurt. So he definitely was a shell of himself. We already mentioned the Greenlaw, and that was big. So that's it. But that's the way it works. Kansas City back to back. Oh, this is brutal. 3 out of 4. Mahomes, and I go against Mahomes finally, and he still bites me in the back. I thought I had him, John. I thought I had him.
Yeah, I thought so too. The way they were playing, I said, Paul might win his bet.
Minutes bet. No money was bet. But I think, yeah, the bad beat of the day, I don't know if you heard this story. Brock Purdy on a prop bet, he was plus, I'm sorry, he had to get over 12 yards or 12 and a half. I'm sorry. I think it was 12 and a half. And he had 13 yards. But at the end of the game, he just took a knee at the end to go to overtime. And that was -1 yard, which took him under the over on the prop bet. There you go, John. Crime doesn't pay.
Don't bet. That's
Speaking of betting, John, that is the segue of segues. So, NBA last night, hot off the presses. Now, I want to say something first because I honestly did not watch the game. You
I
definitely did,
watched it.
but I will let you go. But in 1 sec, let me get this out. All these people out there who are crying fix, a referee who is literally fixing games is never in a million years going to call something like that to get the bet to win. He can do it all throughout the game, folks, very discreetly. And I highly recommend the Tim Donaghy. I don't know what it was, what network was on that documentary about the ex NBA ref who did fix games, and how they did and how he did it. So yeah, you're not gonna. That's not a fix, John. I don't know what was going on there. So yeah, take us through that as the Knicks, who have obviously are the toast of the town in the tri-state, took one on the chin last night against the Rockets.
And I have to, you're going to give credit where credit's due. The Rockets really impressed me with their youth and how long their players are. I mean, you have some real, I'm going to call them thoroughbreds. That's what they reminded me of. I mean, these kids were long. They have some talent on that team. And the Knicks were behind the entire game. They just, the past couple of games, it seems like they've been injured so much. They have sickness. They just have everything going against them. But last night, they made a great comeback twice. They were down by double digits. And at the end of the game, Achua, well, let's put it this way. The Knicks had 12 foul shots the entire game. The Rockets had over 30. So
Okay.
there was a big difference. And believe me, the Knicks were getting hacked all over the place the entire game. It was ridiculous how they weren't calling fouls against the Rockets. But the last play of the game, it was Brunson had just tied up the game. It was 8 seconds to go. So they brought the ball down. They tried to drive to the basket. Achua blocked the shot cleanly. And he blocked it so well, it went all the way out to the three-point line. And by the way, there was no way that Holiday was going to make this shot. There was no way. So Brunson, just to distract him, decided, okay, I'm going to try to distract him and jump up. And he actually jumped to the side of him. He didn't even touch him. And they called a foul with 0.3 to go.
Yes, I did see the replays. Yes.
Terrible. What a terrible, terrible call.
Yeah,
Terrible call.
you can't end the game that way. It was a tie game, right?
And
It
the
was.
bad thing was that Thibodeau had already used his challenge in the second quarter. Uh, I, I think it was for something to do with Taj Gibson. I forgot that they called the foul on him or something. I don't know why he was using that challenge in the second quarter.
It's ridiculous. You can't use it. That's a lesson learned for Coach Tibbs. There's no reason to use that until the last seconds of a game, and if you don't use it, you don't use it, or the last minute. We'll say the last minute of the game.
Yeah, and they ended up getting, it was a 3-shot foul. He made the first two, and then he purposely missed the
Yeah.
last one. But what was weird about that last one is that he hit it off the backboard. The Knicks called time immediately. So they should have had the 0.3 still there. And they said, oh no, the game's done. They reviewed it and said, oh, the game's done. I'm like, how? How was it done? It hit
Well,
the back. It hit the backboard. They called timeout immediately. I don't understand. I didn't understand that last ruling. But aside from that game, uh, the Knicks were really undermanned against the Pacers. They didn't have Hartenstein again. You talk about Achilles. He's had an Achilles injury that's been hampering him. But again, Achua has been playing great. He's undersized. He's 6'8", but he's playing all these big guys. He's been blocking shots. He's been scoring. Again, 24 years old, and he actually is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. They should really think about keeping this kid. He has agility. He's a smart player. I like him. He's a hard worker. But the game I was most proud with the Knicks was when they played the Mavericks. They were so. It was one of those games where you knew the Knicks had no chance of winning it, but somehow they stayed in that game, and they only had 7 players. They only had 7 that they could play. Those guys were exhausted, absolutely exhausted. So to me, I was most proud of them this year with that game in losing to the Mavericks. How those guys just kept fighting and fighting and fighting to stay in the game. But before I forget, for those of you who, I don't know, had your head in the sand all week, the Knicks made a very big trade at the deadline. So as much as I like Grimes, and I really did not, I think Paul and I agree that we both like Grimes very much. They traded Grimes. They got rid of Fournier's salary. I mean, $19 million salary.
Wow.
2 second rounders for Alec Burks and Bogdanovich. So I thought it was a great trade for the Knicks. If they want to go for the championship, I think they're really going for it now. If you look, I'm just going to read off starting lineup and then the second
Unit.
thank you. DiVincenzo, Brunson, Randall, Adenobi, Robinson. Second unit, Burks, Bogdanovic, Achua, Hart, and Hartenstein. And then you still have McBride, Sims, and if you want to throw in Gibson there, if they decide to keep him around, that team can win a championship. That's depth. They're not really, but it's all dependent upon them being healthy. And that's a big if with this team right now because they're being very quiet about Randall, very very quiet. They're saying that he may come back. He's not wearing anything on his shoulder at all. No sling, no nothing. Adenobi just had his surgery on his elbow, which I pretty much saw coming because you can't keep saying it's an aggravated and all that. There was something going on. It was bone chips, so that takes a little while. But if they have all these guys healthy, the Knicks, this may be the year for the Knicks. This may be for the year for the Knicks if they're healthy.
Now
Because I don't.
Robinson, wait. Robinson's status is they're claiming like he's possible for the playoffs. Is that what his?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
That he.
And
That he's.
Randall's the same boat. They're gonna play hopefully in the playoffs. It's not guaranteed, but that's the expectation.
Yes.
Okay.
And
No, you're
because
right. That's a good team. That's a quality team. And Brunson is that guy that you need. Every team needs that person that you're going to go to in crunch time, who is going to score during crunch time. And Brunson is just the ability. I mean, he's got every move in the book, right?
yes, he does.
Right? Every move in the book.
And a guy that continually surprises me, and he must have been working with Steph Curry a lot at Golden State, is DiVincenzo. He's something else. I mean, some of these 3-pointers, these are not, ordinary 3-pointers. Sometimes he's way out and he's hitting these things. And he did say that he worked out with Steph Curry on how to shoot the threes, and it's I am stunned by how good he's been, and he's a scrappy little guy. He plays defense, so a lot.
So you're very happy. So you're very
I,
happy. Now the
I,
Celtics seem to be playing really well, John. I mean, you've been kind of claiming that they're not going to be a problem. So this works out. The thumbs down. You're on video now. So there you go. So you're not afraid of the Celtics at all.
not
So
at
that's
all,
okay.
not at all.
All right. I love it.
They're not tough enough to beat the Knicks. The Knicks, they are not tough enough. I'm telling you. When you look at Jaylen Brown, he reminds me of the way the Knicks when they used to play the Bulls and they used to manhandle Scottie Pippen, where Scottie Pippen used to disappear in those playoff games when they pushed him around. He reminds me of that. They're going to manhandle that team. I would love to play the Celtics. And the team that I'm actually I'm very wary of are the Cleveland Cavaliers. That is a team that not many people are paying attention to, even though they are moving up in the rankings or the standings. They're going to be a problem. They're going to be a big problem. That team. They have size. They have another year under their belt. I think they were a little surprised that the Knicks beat them last year, but that's a team to be worried about. I'm not really that worried about the 76ers. I believe the Celtics could be beaten. The Bucks will always be there. The Bucks are not going to be easy to beat, but watch out for Cleveland. Watch out for Cleveland. I'm not concerned about Miami either. Miami, even though you have Spoelstra there, I don't think they have it this year. I don't think they have it. I think
All
it's
right.
really between the Knicks, Cleveland, and Milwaukee.
All right. You're on the record, John. This is our pre-Valentine's Day show. So just a quick shout out to the Valentines out there. I know I'm waiting all the gifts from all the fans of Bouk and Zoobie. Please put it in the comments about what you're going to get me. So we just have to mention that. And also, I guess, John, we got some snow today in the tri-state. So I know this is probably perfect YouTube watching. So we're not live, unfortunately. So what'd you think? John, are we going to be able to survive now that we actually got our real first measurable snow in a couple of years? I thought, people were literally thinking it was never going to snow again. So sorry, I'm bringing these non-sports items up, but
Yeah, but it's amazing how. What did you say to me? You had about 6 inches. I had about 5. That all of Long Island schools shut down. Shut down. By the way, the snow started actually falling at about 7:30 this morning. Okay, that's when it actually started falling.
right,
But
right.
yet everyone shut down. I think there were 3 school districts that went remotely. The New York City school system shut down completely. And of course, knowing how inept New York City is in anything that they do, their remote learning did not work at all. So, and by the way, do you think that the kids in New York City were going to stay home to learn remotely? They were already, when the snow fell, they were already on the hills sleighing down those hills or doing whatever they need. They were not staying home.
Well, a
No
lot of
way.
them unfortunately don't have hills to go down. That's the problem. But you're right. Snow days, no school. The city, it's happened for generations when it was bad enough. And you're right, this was very borderline that bad. Going remote learning where kids don't learn anything. They really think that that was going to work for one day anyway. And so what happened? So literally nobody could log on, like the system collapsed.
Collapsed. Collapsed.
There you go. Well, John is an
Well,
educator and is well versed in this subject, so he knows what he's talking about, folks.
yeah. Yeah, they're trying to blame IBM for what happened. I'm like, really?
It's
You're
always the
blaming?
vendor's fault, John. It's always the vendor. Oh, you
Well,
test it out? Oh, test? What's that? We're supposed to test it? Anyway,
speaking of
yes.
school districts, since we're on the
Okay.
subject of schools,
Okay. What do you got?
we have a superintendent. I'm not going to mention what district it is in California.
Okay.
The superintendent has been accused, and actually is there's evidence that she did this, that she harassed members of her daughter's softball team for not applauding loud enough after she was voted the MVP of the team. She threatened all of these players. They have all this evidence that she would not allow them to participate in graduation if they did not admit to not clapping for her daughter. Can you believe this nonsense? A superintendent went after these kids on a softball team because they didn't clap loud enough for her daughter at an awards dinner for MVP. And guess what? The superintendent has now been put on suspension for this. I listen. If I were the board, I said this woman's unhinged. You might as well fire her. I mean, this is a fireable offense. Can you imagine that a superintendent to start threatening, not even talking to the parents, but going directly to the students of a high school softball team and threatening them, saying you're not going to be able to walk on graduation if you don't admit to not clapping for my daughter.
Well, maybe
I
she
mean,
saw Travis Kelsey bump Andy Reid in the Super Bowl, and then she's like, "All right, this is it. Everybody should act like this to their everybody's unhinged." That's a perfect word to use. So, yeah, great stuff on the NBA, John. The NHL, we should mention briefly the Rangers, who were slumping, have now suddenly turned it around. Igor Shesterkin had a shutout last night. Again, they're
Mm.
playing more of a defensive style. First shutout of the year. That was a big moment for the Rangers and their fans. But as we always say with the NHL, right? It's a playoff sport, and we'll be talking much more about that in the future. So NBA, NHL, NFL, John, it looks like there's only one subject left. And it's time, folks, for Baseball with Bouk.
Thanks, Paul. So we're going to talk about, of course, your favorite team and my favorite team, the bargain basement Mets. The Mets are always in the headlines for something other than signing players. I wish, listen, I would be willing to removing the Sanford and Son theme song if the Mets would sign a DH. We need a DH. Give me JD Martinez. Please stop saying all these reporters the Mets are negotiating with him. They're looking at him. They're considering him. They're saying all these different terms of saying the Mets are not going to sign him. If they do sign him, I will remove the Sanford and Son theme song. Okay?
Oh, John, we're finally producing it properly that we can hear the song. So, and yeah, people who are under the age of 50 are probably like thinking, "What's going on here?" But that's a little ode to Red Fox, the great Sanford and Son show, where they worked at the garbage dump, and the Met fans are in that dump right now, and they're being forced to listen to David Stearns tell them that don't think we're going to sign Pete Alonso. So sorry to interrupt, John, but
Yeah.
that is a pretty big story.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. He did so much damage through that awkward smile of his, and that because he decided to have like a little press conference, and so did the manager today, which I haven't had a chance to see. But David Stearns is not exactly media savvy, uh, and the smirk on his face, I feel like saying, yeah, you shouldn't be smirking when you're saying certain things, particularly when they're talking about Pete Alonso and saying, yeah, Pete, we're gonna, I haven't seen Pete. I love that. I haven't seen Pete, but when I see him, we're gonna say, well, you have a great year. The team has a great year, and we'll talk at the end of the. I was like, no, no, no. That's not what Met fans want to hear. They want to know, are you going to sign Pete or are you going to trade Pete? Now, I'm going to pose this to everyone, and this is actually perfect for the comments section. If Pete Alonso is a free agent at the end of the year, and Juan Soto is a free agent at the end of the year, who are you signing? Would you want Pete Alonso or do you want Juan Soto if you had your choice?
Correct. All right. You're asking me that one?
I'm
You're
asking the
asking all the
fans that, and
yeah.
I'm asking the fans if they want to comment on it, send us comments. I'm asking you, Paul, if you had a choice, since he has the same agent, who do
Oh,
you take?
I'm taking Soto, definitely.
I would take Soto too.
Right.
If I'm going to
But
spend, and
yeah,
and I don't think that the Yankees, of course, the Yankees would want to sign him, but if it's between the Yankees and the Mets, I think Soto wants to stay in the National League, to be honest, and whoever gives him the most money, obviously.
yeah,
But
exactly. A little factor.
if you're going to offer a 10-year contract or a 12, I mean, Soto's 26 years old.
Yeah.
Alonso's going to be, I think he's 30, maybe going on 31 soon. I would take Soto.
Right.
If you're
Well,
going
we
to
don't
spend the
know.
money, if you're going to spend the money, and maybe David Stearns is thinking about that, I don't know.
I
But
think I think he's thinking that he hopes that Pete doesn't have that good of a year. Because if Pete has a huge year, if he goes out and hits 50 home runs, which is definitely possible. Stearns is he's screwed. So he almost has to not root, or just kind of in the back of his mind, hope he doesn't have a huge year. John, we talk about this all the time. The Mets are in this, like, you're supposed to accept the transition year. Transitioning from what? What did they win? They went to the World Series in 2015. It's
Yeah.
the transition. They had 100 wins in a watered down league. It doesn't, 2 years ago. It's not like, what are they transitioning from? They haven't even come close to being a championship team since 2015.
Yeah, and even that was a fluke that year. If you think about the run on they went on that year,
Right,
but
but give them credit. But I mean, obviously, completely different organization. But
correct.
this concept that Met fans are supposed to be accepting this transition. What do you mean? What do you transition? What do you like? It drives me crazy. Who cares? It's either you. They have high price talent, and then they're going cheap to fill out the 26. I
Yeah,
mean, we'll do this coming up. We'll do our spring training, before, and we're going to go through the roster and who do we think is going to be on this 26, and is that good enough to be a playoff team? I think Met fans are realistic. Like, okay, we understand this is not a World Series competitive team, but you're telling me you're supposed to go into the season not trying to get in the playoffs in this expanded world of playoffs? I mean, seriously, that's completely unacceptable.
and
Absolutely.
well, and what's crazy, and I again when I tell people bargain basement Mets, listen, they are way over the they're paying all these salary cap. I keep calling it salary cap, but anyway, they're paying taxes
Right.
over the
Yes.
and so 60 million of that this year is being paid to Verlander, Scherzer,
Right.
other players that are no longer with the team.
Right.
That will be wiped out next year. That's all gone next year. So we don't have any excuses. Yes, we are paying very high taxes. It's over 100 million. I mean, that's what's pathetic about all this is they're not exactly the bargain basement Mets, but they are the bargain basement Mets. They're not bargain basement in that they have by far the highest salaries and taxes, but with the type of players that they're filling, like yesterday, they announced Ben Gamble. They signed him to a minor league contract. Who cares? Who cares? He's what you're gonna? How many backups to backups to backups? Do you are you already estimating in your mind that Bader's going to get hurt on day one? That Marte is going to be hurt again? I mean, they're thinking very pessimistically because I'm thinking all these guys that are signing all these minor league contracts, they're backups to backups. It's crazy. It's and today of another guy that they really could have used and signed pretty cheaply, Jorge Soler,
Solerson,
signed
yeah.
with the Giants, 3 years, 42 million, very reasonable deal. That's a reasonable for a guy that hit 36 home runs last year. That's not a bad deal. He's only 32 years old. And one other guy that we did not mention last week, which was a huge move, was Corbin Burns. Got traded to the Baltimore Orioles. I
Right,
mean,
right. You're not.
you talk about a team that's stacked now. Yankee fans, I'm sorry to say, you're going to have a hard time winning your division. I'm looking at the Yankees starting pitching again. I'm looking at their relief. It's okay. Even their lineup, it's okay. There's a lot of holes in that lineup. I mean, outside of Soto and Judge, you have a lot of holes in the Yankee lineup. I mean, I'm looking at strikeout city with this team. So, and two other things that we need to speak about is Buck Showalter had a nice
Going off.
interview. He was going off, and I loved that he went off because he was very angry when he had people from the front office asking him to rest certain players after they had a fantastic game because they were running around too much on the field. And he's like, what? It was as if load management. They call it load management.
Right, right.
And Showalter used the example. So Brandon Nimmo had 2 triples and a home run. I'm going to tell him, well, you ran around the bases too much. I have to rest you. He goes, he was incredulous and real. I've never seen him that angry, even talking about it. He was angry, really angry.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Billy Epler, my good friend Billy Epler. How many times did we speak about it during the year, Paul, when we were describing these ridiculous injuries? I don't know
The
the
dry
lazy the
eye
dry.
syndrome. That was the immortal Thomas Nito's injury. Yeah, we had a lot of laughs about the dry eye syndrome. We thought we were in like the Twilight Zone. Like, why aren't people talking about this being the biggest scam of all time? Yeah, they got so he's just what is he suspended for a year, but he doesn't even have a job. So was
Right.
he with somebody? Is he with an
No,
organization?
no, no, no,
Okay,
not at all. He's not with anyone, but he's suspended for the year. But you and I know, and I think all the fans know, that teams do this. It's not just Billy Epler. Everyone does this. How many?
of course.
Listen to me. Tim LaCastro. How many times did I say, man, Tim LaCastro's been on the injury list for the. They were doing the guy a favor so he could get a major league salary, to be honest. And I definitely didn't want him playing on the Mets, but I'm saying to myself, yeah, you know what? So many teams do this. This is no secret in baseball. Same thing like stealing signs. Come on, that's been going on for ages. Oh, let's penalize the Astros because they were banging on a garbage can. Listen, they've been doing this for years. Cheating goes on all across baseball. So no surprise to me at all. No surprise to me at all.
Well, John, the other sports, the NBA and the NHL, the NHL is famous for this, is that they always say upper or lower body. That's all they say. So in the other sports, they literally let them get away with not even disclosing what the injury is. And in baseball, like you could just Nito, he's got a sore hamstring. That's like the classic, right? You have a sore muscle with dry eye syndrome. I mean, really, the Mets last year were a comedy, and they don't make the changes. This is going to be a fascinating year. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. I'm looking forward to seeing this train wreck. I hope they prove me wrong. I'd love it. My God, I would love it. But if they think they're gonna what? They're gonna win 80 games and they're gonna try to spin it that they had a successful season, and then they're going to be able to spend money next year.
There's a
So
lot of ifs. There's a
yeah,
lot of
well,
ifs on this team.
John, we will be monitoring on a weekly basis with baseball with Bouk. So yeah, great rundown. You have anything else? Because it's a little early. Because we'll definitely do our under overs, and then we'll definitely go through the rosters who we think the 26 will be for the Mets, and we'll do that hopefully for the Yankees. John, do a little research. I'll try to do some work for once. But anyway, it's like the contenders are the usual. That, like you said, that Burns trade was a big one for the Orioles. They're going to have a new owner. The expectations, though, for the Orioles are going to be through the roof. So that's
Yeah.
always a bit of a danger. I always like my teams to have no expectations because, again, they're human beings and they think that it's just human nature, right? You hear
Yeah.
how good you are, you think you're good, and then maybe you don't work as hard or you don't prep as hard. So, yeah, we'll see. Still got plenty of times, but I guess technically the pitchers and catchers are already there, correct?
They are there. Yeah, they
So
started.
when is reporting day? Like when they get to interview Pete Alonso? What day is that? Do we know?
I believe they start next week. Next week.
Next week. Okay,
Next week.
so I
They're
can't
usually
wait
like
for
a
that
week.
first interview with Pete because the first question is coming exactly. What do you think what David Stern says about playing the year out? Like you said, that was shocking that he said that. And like you said, the kind of the arrogance about blaming Boris. Oh, you know who his agent is. Like what, Boris hasn't represented like 20% of the league. I mean, come on. I mean, that's part of work. It's at your job. You're gonna have to deal with agents like Scott Boris. You know the
Well,
right. He's
well, and
basically
he's
waving the white flag. Oh, I can't sign players from Scott Boris because he's gonna squeeze me till I cry. Yeah, that's the way it works, David. That's the way it works.
Well,
Leverage.
and, and the thing is that he's saying, oh yeah, we'll treat him like other Met players, like we did, when Diaz went free agency, but they signed him immediately, and then you had Nimmo, who was with Boris. I'm saying to myself, why don't you just, instead of it being a distraction for the
Exactly.
entire freaking year, just make up your mind. Yeah, as Alexander succinctly put it last week, Cohen has the money, okay? Negotiate now. What are you doing? And not only that, it's it's going to make Pete Alonso. I happen to think that Pete Alonso will be affected by this. It didn't affect Aaron Judge. And you saw what a miscalculation that was for the Yankees, where they could have signed him for 30 million rather than 40 million a year. Um, I think that Pete Alonso is going to be really distracted by this. He really wants to earn his money. He wants stability, and I think he's a very sensitive guy. It's just my take,
Okay.
but I think the Mets really should take care of this now and stop.
Well, John,
And that smirk from David Stearns needs to go. Don't smirk when you're talking. Like you said, it almost, I don't know how to describe when I saw that, because little by little I was getting really teed off at him. I'm like, would you stop? Like you think you know something more than everybody else, or you're scheming something. I don't know what he was doing. But very awkward when he was at that press conference and being
well, well,
and being secretive. And I understand why he has to be secret. You don't want to let everyone know your negotiations and all that. But don't say that to Met fans that you're going to wait until the end of the year,
well,
unless
that's
you're.
letting them know what the negotiation is. And Nimmo is a perfect example why you don't wait. Because if you signed him the year before, you would have never had to give him that long-term 8-year deal. The fact that you waited, it cost you more in the end. You got to be prepared as a GM how you're going to run your team from year to year. Now he gets a pass, right? Because he wasn't there. So that's the problem with criticizing Stearns, because Stearns might have been like, hey, if I was in charge, I would have signed him. So he'll be able to play that card. It's a results business, John. We'll find out. Enough about the Mets, enough about baseball. I mean, maybe we should touch on I guess you do have more in baseball. You got some more?
No, no. One last thing is with Stearns. He has to understand that he's in New York now. He's not in Milwaukee anymore, so he doesn't have to act like he's in Milwaukee. You're in New York. You have the budget. You know who the fan favorite is. You Why not, and be more like the Braves? That's the best way I could put this. Be like the Atlanta Braves. Be like even the Kansas City Royals. Look what they did with Bobby Witt Jr. Brilliant. That's what you should be doing. If they One guy that they should give a long-term contract if he has a decent year is Alvarez. Don't even wait with Alvarez. Sign him to a 10-year extension. I mean, this is what we should be doing.
Right.
If you want financial stability for the Mets, you have to follow the Braves plan. Very simply, follow the Braves. The Braves have been a tremendous organization all these years. It's because look at their entire starting 8 are signed to long-term deals. Every single one of them. They don't have to worry about it now. They don't have to worry about free agency. They don't have to worry about opting out. All of them have no trade clauses. All of them.
Well, there
So
you go. Maybe, I don't know, John Book might have to become a Brave fan. I don't know. It's
no,
possible. They
no.
got the Greek GM, so you're ready. All right, John. So I was trying to start a little college hoops.
Yep.
It's you're so we're taping on the 13th, as we mentioned earlier. Huge game for St. John's tonight. I mean, I think it's almost, I don't want to, it's definitely not a must win, but for they want to get in comfortably, it's a must win. If they're going to be literally watching Selection Sunday on the edge of their seat. So, what do you think? I mean, I saw them live. They're just lacking a scorer consistently. They just don't have an outside shooter. And that to me is their biggest weakness. So I know they did lose again, right? Since we last spoke. What's the latest on that?
Marquette.
So they
Marquette.
lost to Marquette, right? Which
Yeah,
is obviously a good team.
they were tied with them with 3 minutes to go, and then they just The last 3 minutes they totally outclassed. And this kid Kolick at Marquette, what a
Yeah,
player he is.
Tyler
But
Cole.
what I didn't understand is why didn't they put someone or double team that kid somehow? I mean, he was shooting threes. Eh, What a player. I mean, you give him the opening, he's just picking you apart. Smart guy.
Yeah, he's a
Smart
good
guy.
player. He actually is funny. He had a slump this year, so I think teams were like starting to let him shoot. But yeah, no, he's solid. So that's not a bad loss, obviously. They can't afford any bad losses. But tonight at Providence, right? It's on the road, very tough place to play. So pretty much a must win. Since we haven't talked much college hoop lately, the last time I think we talked about it, I mentioned that UConn and Kentucky were the top two teams. Since that great comment, Kentucky, I don't know if they've won a game, so I put the kibosh on them. That is unbelievable. They've kind of fallen apart, and now Connecticut and most people say Purdue, who is I'm still not a believer of the supporting cast for Big Zach Edney, who is one of the more interesting guys to watch, who's probably not going to be a first round pick in the NBA because he just has not developed any sort of a perimeter game. So maybe he'll be like Lopez, one of the was the remember the Lopez who played for the Nets, who is now was he at Milwaukee now? It's amazing that guy's now a 3-point shooter at 7 feet. Now Eddie, he's like 7'4" or whatever he is, but I mean, I can't see why you wouldn't be interested in taking him. He's such a unique guy that he's so big that you can't keep him off the boards. He's enormous. I don't know have you seen him play?
I I I actually watched part of a game and I'm like, how tall is this kid? I didn't know who he was. This guy was huge.
He's
He
big.
doesn't he doesn't even need to jump to do a dunk. It's just like he stands. It's like going like this.
Yes, yes. So Purdue is kind of taking that second spot. It's pretty wide open. So it's funny that I bring Baylor, the Baylor Bears, into our podcast because my relationship with the team. But when I should have made this joke earlier about the angle of my camera in last week's show. That's like the angle of the camera the opposite
Oh
way at a
yeah,
Baylor game, where
it's true.
people they probably don't know this, but they have a new arena that they actually opened mid-season so they could get the conference games in, and it's really changed the dynamic of their home advantage. The problem is when they designed the building, they didn't have the right location set up for the camera. So
Yeah,
you watch a game from the new place, the Foster Pavilion, it's called, and they're actually on tonight at 9 Eastern against Oklahoma, I believe on ESPN2. So if you want to get vertigo, go turn on ESPN at about 9 and watch a game at a completely different angle. So I had to throw them in. They had a disappointing loss to Kansas, missed 2 threes at the end of the game to tie. They couldn't do it. I know nobody probably cares, but when it comes to college hoops, we're gonna have this unique. They're not really. There's one local and one not even remotely local. And in my other team, the Maryland Terrapins, they're not even worth mentioning. They're lucky if they make the NIT. Oh man, the glory days, man, oh man, I'll tell you. So we'll be, going to have our March Madness show coming up, obviously later in March, obviously, and everybody hopefully will check that out. So I don't know if you had any other thoughts on any sports, John.
no, it's time for the rant of the week with Mr. Zublake.
Thanks, John. So this week's rant is about the team that we always like to talk about that we didn't talk about too much today. So during Super Bowl week, when everybody's talking about the big game, what would a franchise do that hasn't made the playoffs in 13 years? Let's announce that we're going to have new uniforms. So Captain Chaos, better known as Woody Johnson, decided that he was going to during the Super Bowl, right before it, who knows when, that he's announcing that the Jets are getting new uniforms. And I'm like flashing back. I'm like, didn't this just happen like 2 or 3 years ago where they made this big deal about the uniforms? So I decided to find all of my different Jet logos, and I am proudly wearing the this is probably a Target special that my wife was like, oh, I need another Christmas gift for my husband. Oh, the Jet stuff that worked. So here you go. There's one. But I got some more props, folks. There you go. The pretty much the original emblem that came back recently. That was something that everybody always wanted. Another version of it for our fans out there. There you go. Everybody got one of these in 1970. So this is one of the oldest helmets back in that same era. To me, kind of the classic Jet helmet. John, there's more. The Jet hat. I don't even know where this one came from. Hopefully you can see that. This
Yeah.
is my friend was a fireman at the station got this hat for me, and it was signed by 4 Jets: Chad Pennington, James Darling, Marvin Jones, and Chris Hayes, the
Huh.
Immortals. But I'm not done, John. Here it is, folks. And the reason I'm showing this button, I hope everybody can see it, is that this looks like it's going to be very close to the new insignia. The Jets with the plane above the T, or the
But
J.
that,
It's extension of the J. So this one was from the 80s, 90s. And I think we've mentioned this a long time ago when the Jets are always talking about things that nobody cares about, is that this insignia that the younger crowd really likes and can't wait to get back. Folks, when they had this, we couldn't wait to go back to this. So, Captain Chaos, one thing matters: victories. Forget your uniforms. People don't care. That is the rant of the week.
and what the younger crowd does not know is that plane that's on that helmet that you were showing was the Concorde. If you remember, they made that when the Concorde plane was around.
You're telling me this is related to the Concorde. So, this is a good history lesson. All the Jet emblems, insignias, with no Super Bowl appearances since 1970, the 69 season, going on. That is a 55 years. And John mentioned that we are both 59 going on 60. We don't have any recollection of this. This doesn't matter, folks. Get us some wins, please. So I couldn't think of a better way to get into the 2024 football season with the excitement of the Jets getting new uniforms again.
Yeah, and of course, Captain Chaos has decided to be critical of his offensive coordinator, of his of Zach Wilson. A little bit too late for fans. And you should have been thinking about that during to tell us after the fact that you were really, really mad and having words with them doesn't mean a hill of beans to us. You didn't make the move. Listen, if you have a problem with the people that are running your team, get rid of them. Get rid of them. What are you afraid of? Why, we can't get someone better than Robert Saleh? I know I've been picking on him. Come on. If they do not produce, my father used to always say, and I'll leave everyone with this. So when he used to talk about George Steinbrenner, and George Steinbrenner always going after his players and criticizing his players, he goes, why shouldn't he criticize them? He goes, they're not producing. It's the same idea here. If people are not in your jobs, if you're not producing in your jobs, what happens to you? You might be called into the office, maybe give you a counseling session. But if you continue not to produce, you're getting fired very quickly. Why he's having so much patience with these guys who have not produced anything. This is it for them. And don't tell me that we're 10-7, 9-8. We missed the play. If they miss the playoffs this year, they need to all be wiped out. Every single one of them gone. So
that will happen. All righty, folks.
anyway,
Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe and like our episode.
and as always, I want to thank our producer Zach Zubalake, and to our loyal listeners, keep the feedback coming. As Paul said, we would love to see your comments as well. And we also would like to thank our community partners, Ronald McDonald House, Kids in Seats, and the Jackie Robinson Foundation. See you next week.